of magic happen. Like I tell her, like, you know, this is what we want to have happen. And she like manages to keep a million balls in the air. So, but all the thank yous in the world cannot adequately convey just how grateful we are for the time and the thought that you have invested in our mission over the last 9 years. Despite so many demands on your time between work and a family, you've always come to board meetings with such thought-provoking questions. You've made time to serve as a thought partner on important management questions when I've just asked for like impromptu calls. You've reached out with words of encouragement and celebration, and you've searched your network for connections that might benefit our students. So I know that I speak for all of us when I say how very grateful we are and how much we'll miss having you on the board. But this is not goodbye. Know that we will definitely still find ways to keep in touch and to share updates on all the many ways in which the good work that you have helped to launch over all of these years is continuing to progress. Thank you. Thank you for continuing the legacy that your family has always had of service and for doing that with us. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you. I'm just so honored to have been on this board. And as you know, at various points where I said, you should really take my spot back for someone who can be more useful, especially when I felt like during my 6 years of GDS service, being chair there made it very challenging. I was, grateful, learned so much from you and from the whole board. Terry, who was so kind to bring me in the first place and so many others. So very, very grateful for whatever little bit I have contributed to such an incredible organization. Really just humbled by it.
Jenny, thank you so much for wonderful years serving on the board. You were one of the most thoughtful board members ever. And we appreciate all that you've done to help DC Prep Mission. You were a great contributor. We're going to miss you.
And Jenny, I want to weigh in too. Of course, Laura and Terry said everything I was going to say. So, but I want to say thank you. And especially thank you for giving us a push every now and then. I love the fact that you would take a stand on something and say, yeah, but what about this? And not back down. And we've really appreciated that. And I did always feel like you were juggling balls in the air, even on screen, whatever, between kids and a heavy work life and GDS and us, but you have been very loyal to us and we really appreciate it. And the fact that you're in the smallest hotel room in the world in New York says it all.
Thank you.
I'll just add one thing, which is, yes, no matter how much Jenny had going on and all the different demands and locations and family things she was juggling, I feel like you always brought your A game in terms of really trying to think through what was best for the organization and trying to be creative and push us to think of new ideas, new things to try, new questions to ask, new ways to be even better. So really, really appreciate all your service, Jenny.
Well, thank you, Emily. It's been amazing watching what you created and what you've kept leading in all your various capacities. So thank you. Thank you, Michaela.
All righty. So let's put our emotions aside because we got to focus on the meeting. So with that being said, I think our first order of business is we need to just approve the agenda. So could I get a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Second. All right, we'll have to kind of go around because we're video. So aye for Patrick. Michaela? Aye. Aye. Okay. Chevy? Got an aye from Chevy. Jenny already. Pam?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Terry?
Aye.
Tamika?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Colette?
Aye.
Emily? Emily? Looks like she dropped. Oh, she's back. Aye. And Dan?
Aye.
Okay, so our agenda is approved. So first order of business is if we could review and approve May minutes. They should have been in the invite. So if you haven't looked at them, we'll take just a minute or so. If you could look at them really quick.
Move for their approval.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Aye for Patrick. Michaela?
Aye.
Aye. Chevy? I can't hear you, Chevy, but I think you said aye.
Aye, sorry about that.
It's okay. Jenny? Pam?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Colette?
Aye.
Tamika?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
And Emily?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the minutes are approved. Okay, Laura, I will turn it over to you and your team for updates.
Thanks, Patrick. We're going to have us as a team present. Different people are going to speak to different aspects of PARCC scores and start of the year. Katie is going to start us off.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Can you all hear me? I was having a hard time finding my mute button. Okay. I want to preface what I'm going to share with, we learned a lot last year. Last year was an exceptionally difficult school year. And I went and looked back at the board updates I wrote at this time last year, and already I was signaling, wow, this is going to be a really hard year. And I'm happy to report that this school year is off to a much stronger start. We committed to ensuring that there is a platform for learning in every single school and every single classroom. We overhired so that we could ensure that we had staff in every room. We doubled down and committed to strong culture practices to make sure that we had super strong routines and strong relationships. And we recommitted to some of the things that have always made us special. Our community meetings, and we didn't do those last year because of COVID. So community meetings and big fun incentives that incentivize that it's cool to be smart and hardworking and come to school on time. Tweaking and parts of our uniform and making it a little bit more straightforward. We kind of swung to having it be a little looser, and we got feedback that we needed to find some good middle ground. Our attendance is on track in all of our schools, so it's just a much stronger start to the year. So we're really excited about that. We set these targets for ourselves to hit by the third week of school by September 15th. And we are hitting them on lots of different areas in terms of culture, like just ensuring that platform for learning. So now we're turning our focus to really zooming in on academics, which is super important given that our academic standing is a challenging outlook. We are down across all of our metrics, F&P, which is our reading level data, PARCC, NWEA, and class in two out of our three schools were lower than they have been. And so we're really focused right now on making sure that our teachers have time. They will have it in the next 2 Wednesday PDs coming up to look at all the data we have about the kids in their classrooms and make a game plan for how they want to move that data between now and our first data day, which is November 4th. And simultaneously, in the background, myself and my team are putting together some additional things that we're going to recommend to the principals in the schools about how to shift our programming potentially even further for certain students, given some of their data is pretty low, and we're going to need to do more than just some of our standard programming to move them and to support them. So that's sort of our short-term this year plan to get us up and running to start moving data faster. And then we're also starting to take a look at our longer-term planning for next year and beyond, and thinking about aspects of our org evolution model, what we thought we were going to be taking on and what has been interrupted due to the pandemic and some of our current realities, and where we might need to step up and do some of our best practices from the past and kind of pull those forward again and slow down on some of the evolution of our other programming ideas. So we're going to be investigating that with our staff through task forces this year, and we'll be able to report back to you about some of those plans and ideas and recommendations at our November board meeting.
Thanks, Katie. As Katie mentioned, we put a big emphasis on hiring to make sure that we would be able to start off the school year strong and have the staff in place that we needed to be able to go through training and, and open schools fully staffed, because that takes such a load off of all of our teachers and all of our leaders when they don't have to do as much coverage. And so that's why we have the 4 additional subs at each school, and then we have additional full-time subs that we've hired through a sub agency, and they will be with us through December in order to make sure that we're able to stabilize whatever fluctuations we may see due to whatever sort of attendance issues we have. Right now, we are fully hired at 2 of our schools, and then at the other 4 campuses, at 2 schools, we're missing 1 full-time sub at each campus. And then 1 campus, we have 2 operations roles that we're looking to fill. And then we have 1 teacher role at 1 campus. So we're not 100% at every campus, but we're very close. And our recruitment team has been doing, I think, a really, really terrific job of closing roles quickly. They have been, I've just been incredibly impressed, because it's a pretty, it's an experienced team, but new in the roles that they're in. And they've been a smaller team than average, and they've still been able to achieve really impressive hiring goals. So we are making progress, and we'll continue to make that a priority. Alicia, do you want to talk a little bit about health and safety?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I am excited to report that we've continued to embody the sentiment of planning with and not for when it comes to implementing our COVID protocols. This summer, we held COVID health and safety virtual town halls to engage our families and inform them of the policies that we were planning to implement this school year. We really wanted to get their input, and we wanted to preview where we were thinking of heading so that they could help us to signal if that was the right direction. Additionally, we sent surveys to all of our families and staff to solicit further input on those COVID protocols. And we've started the year with continuing to indoor mask as a direct result from that feedback. So we have indoor masking policy that has continued, and outdoor masking is still optional. We also offer symptomatic testing on site for students and staff. We have implemented a test to stay program for students and staff this school year to start, and we will continue to implement the test to return after our long breaks, after our breaks of at least 1 week. So those are the policies that we started with this school year. And as a result, we've had very few positive COVID cases in our building, which is awesome, because that means students and staff can stay in our buildings and continue to learn and engage. So just to share some data, as of 9/14, we've had 23 positive student cases this school year across all 6 campuses. And we've only had 7 positive staff members. So again, very few. And with the implementation of the test to stay program, we no longer have to quarantine unvaccinated individuals. So any unvaccinated close contacts can remain in our building, continue to participate in the test to stay program. And as long as they test negative, then they are allowed to remain in our buildings. And so we've seen really positive impacts from that program. In spite of having a positive individual, we've had to run the test to stay program at all of our campuses for at least 1 homeroom. In spite of that, we've been able to keep large majority of our students in our buildings and learning. So we've seen a positive impact from that program. Where we're heading directionally, we have now been in school for about a month. And so we are planning to re-engage our stakeholders and get their input on what COVID protocols we need to continue, what COVID protocols we might want to change, or iterate on, and what COVID protocols we might want to drop. And so that is where we're going. After having a month of data and a month of these protocols, we are creating the timeline to engage them and to make decisions about whether we want to continue with these current protocols or make some changes.
And then Barry is attending an ANC meeting tonight, so he's not able to join us. And so he has been working very closely with Alicia and others on No Shots, No School. So DC government requires that all students who attend school, whether that's in person or virtual, whether that's private school, district school, charter school, any school, need to be up to date on childhood immunizations. And there's like a window by, kind of within which they need to demonstrate proof of being fully vaccinated. This is an area that DC and frankly, everywhere in the country has struggled to get 100% vaccination rate among children. And so this is an area where DC government is really pushing to enforce that rule for everyone's safety. I'm sure you guys have seen the news, but there have been like polio outbreaks in New York. There's just a lot of bad things that can happen if children are not vaccinated. And so we are trying to support in all the ways that we can. Barry and in partnership with the operations team and others has worked very hard to make sure that we're offering vaccine bans. We had one at our Benning campus today. I know that we had a number of families who signed up to participate. And there's a lot of people who are doing a lot of outreach to families to make sure that families are aware of the requirement, that they know what they need to do to get their child vaccinated and to demonstrate proof of vaccination, because there is a timeline, and after that timeline, then we're not allowed to have children attend school. So it's very high stakes for us to make sure that we, in all schools, right, are making sure that families are aware of the requirement and have all the support that they need to be able to get their children vaccinated. So we still have a ways to go, particularly in our elementary schools, but we have done a lot of work to build a strong plan and to execute on that plan. And from everything that we've heard in conversations with like other networks, we are doing as much as anyone, and if not more, to make sure that we're really planning ahead and trying to push for vaccination.
How many are not vaccinated? And is the final day after October 5th or
the percent varies by campus. I'm going to see if I can like pull it up, but I would say among our elementary schools, it's kind of around 30% of students are still not vaccinated. It's much lower. It's in kind of the teens in our middle schools. The first date of exclusion is 10, 11. I'm looking to, Alicia will be able to correct me. Is that right?
Yes.
That's the date.
Yeah, I would just name it, the earliest possible date of exclusion is October 11th. So that's, yeah.
And let me ask, that's for a certain age group, right? It's not for all of the kids, right? I think it's like 12 and up or 11 and up or something like that, right?
That's for our younger, that's for our youngest students up until what grade, Alicia?
Pre-K 3 through fifth grade, excuse me. The earliest possible exclusion date is October 11th.
And so that's the date on which we will like send home additional letters to families saying like, if your child does not yet demonstrate that they are fully vaccinated, these are the steps that you need to take. This is the timeline that you need to take. And we will continue. I mean, we're doing outreach up until then, but we will continue to do like extensive outreach to make sure that families have every opportunity to like be aware of what is necessary and have the resources and around like where they can take their child if, you know, if they don't necessarily have their own pediatrician.
But just to be clear, I think the confusion may have been, this isn't for COVID vac. If you're under 12, you don't have to have COVID. This is for other routine ones.
Yes.
Correct. This is for everything like up to COVID. The COVID vaccine is only required for older children,
Right.
12 and over, where there is like a FDA fully approved vaccine.
Thanks, Dan, for clearing that up, because that's what I was talking about, like the 12 and up. Yeah, for COVID. Thanks.
Katie, I'd love to have a little bit more color commentary about your team's thoughts about the PARCC scores. I mean, I think it would have been shocking if they hadn't gone down, so it wasn't a surprise. You know, I think that they went down. I was surprised by how much they went down, and I'm wondering if part of that is that we have such a high touch model, or, I mean, I don't know how to think about that, and I'm sure you guys are noodling that really hard. So that's really the first question. I'd love to hear more from you on that. And then the second question is, for those students who really did score poorly or who lost a lot of ground, are we making any special strides for them individually, tutoring, whatever?
So to answer the first question, our part of this is sort of a technicality, which is it's the way that they report the PARCC data. We really benefit from how well our 7th and 8th graders do typically.
Okay.
And if you pull out how our 7th and 8th graders did, they lost ground in, I think, what I would say is like an expected rate, similar to the rest of, you know, kind of down 10 points. And their other data points aren't as far as off. But because they weren't as strong as they normally are, it didn't kind of pull up the overall picture. So I think we're really feeling the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in particular, some 6th grade results being not great. But if you look at our data over time, it's always stronger at some of the older grade levels. So I think that's one big reason. I think that the reason that our middle grade struggled so much is because coming into last year, we had so many students for the first time ever who were in such large numbers who were really struggling with basic foundational needs. 6th graders who we needed to do guided reading with because they were lower. They had missed out on a bunch of reading during the pandemic. And so I think we overinvested in trying to catch them up there and didn't do as much on grade level content. And I think that was sometimes because we thought that was what they needed first. But I also think it was because we were really plagued, like all schools in the country were, with other realities like not having enough staff in the building all the time. And so different people were covering for different people all the time. So we just didn't always have the staff to pull off all the groups we wanted to pull off. And, you know, there were some morale issues of teachers. It was hard to push and have some of the urgency that we typically do. I think the combination of those things resulted in us having much lower results than we typically had. We thought we lost ground. So I think the PD I was referencing that's coming up these next 2 Wednesdays is all about making sure people understand this is your block of time where you do a kind of prerequisite skill teaching. And this is your block of time where you keep teaching the grade level content so that we're remediating and accelerating and doing both. Doing that, just getting that up and running and making sure all the different adults we have in the building are all playing, or in a classroom are all playing a role with that, is a big lift. I think we're going to have a couple of weeks to get that going. And then when we get to day-to-day 1 on November 4th, we're going to introduce ideas about how to get certain students more. I think some of those trade-offs will be hard, right? We'll be requiring students to miss advisory or stay after school or not take science or art, so that we can give them more reading and math. But we are committed to figuring out some options, and are working on that right now.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question also? So I was curious about reaction of staff and parents to the news, and if it was, a big deal or not, for different groups. And I'm also wondering, just from the, our little highest performing network of charter schools, have you guys thought about, do we still say that? Do we stop saying that for a while? I felt for a while like we should just probably stop saying that, because it's inevitable that, we'll have this at some point. And I think there's other great things to say about us as well, but it's stuck because it's an easy thing to say. So curious about both those things.
I would say from a parent standpoint, we have not seen the Park scores yet. And at orientation last week, I asked the staff, when can parents expect to see them? So they said about 2 weeks. So I think that they're going to share those scores with the parents in about 2 weeks. And I think at that point, probably get some feedback from parents and stuff. So.
Yeah, we've shared the overall scores with the families, but the individual student reports not been sent to us by OSSE yet. So parents don't have their individual, they understand how it impacted the school, but they don't have the kind of individual impact yet. So I think we'll know more about parent response soon. I think staff the principals cried, every single one of them, instantaneously. I think there's some feelings of shame. There's, just deep regret. It's hard. It's really hard. I think different teachers, depending on how long they've been with us, are experiencing the feelings around it in a different way. Us old timers are really having a hard time. Really, it's like a deep sense of grief and disappointment in ourselves.
Can I make a quick comment? Katie, the way I view it is the DC Prep's value add is so great to the students that come through our door, particularly the younger kids. And when we didn't have our full program at work last year, we suffered because we add more value. So I guess I don't feel that as badly as some. In other words, in a normal year, we can give them the full program. Of course, we excel. When you can't give them the program, look where these poor kids are. To me, it just shows what a great job, Katie, you and everybody else have been doing over the years.
Thank you. Thank you.
I concur, and I was just wondering if there's a way, given what you're sharing, is there a way that we can communicate to the principals and to the staff these sorts of feelings, so they're not thinking that those of us who are external by some way or overseeing the results are feeling like they failed, because I don't think any of us feel that way at all. And how can we, they're going to beat themselves up enough already. How can we lift them? You and the team.
I think such a lovely suggestion. Thank you. I'm trying really hard to remind them that we've been awesome before. We're going to get back there. We know how to do it. That's my message. And I think all the other good news that's coming out, the Blue Ribbon announcement, I think we're distinguished, or a network of distinction from the accreditation group. I think those are other pieces of good news that we're really trying to hold up. I will certainly think about if there are things that you all can do, but just the support you consistently show us, I think, is wonderful. Just getting to hear these words makes me feel better. I'll go back, charge back in and send people. I think people feel really determined now. So it's been hard, but I think it's good, because I think people feel a real sense of, we've got to get this right.
I'm just going to push back for a moment, which is, I know you said we were awesome before and we're going to get there again. I really don't think it's that you're not awesome now. And I just think it would be so much worse if it weren't for all the incredible work you've done. And so I'm curious how you think, it may not help at all, but if Laura wrote a note and the board all signed it, saying how just blown away, frankly, we are that things weren't worse given all this that happened in the last couple of years, and how incredible, what a testament it is to this group and their leaders that things are where they are. And yes, we want to keep getting better, but something along those lines, would that mean anything, or is it, not the message you want? Just throwing that out there as a thought.
I think sending a note would be helpful. I think that I think people would find that helpful. I think the message, I love the pushback. I love the pushback. Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as you are saying, because I want there to be some fire, So I think it's thank you for all you're doing. We know that our program adds value. We know you're working hard to deliver on the services and quality to kids. I don't know. We believe in you. We appreciate you. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and we know that this is going to turn around. We're excited for the coming year. What's
if anyone can do it, it's you all.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one thing I did this year prior to school is I went to all of the schools just to kind of walk around and talk and try to give the teachers a prep talk. And unbeknownst to me, they were actually having group meetings at the time. So, I just stood up in front of all the teachers, told them that the board was behind them. We believed in them. We supported you. We talk about your welfare and things like that. And I think that it was greatly appreciated. A lot of the teachers came up after and said, hey, thank you for coming out to speak to us and have a few words and stuff. So.
And I just wanted to definitely echo what everyone has said. Sorry, that's my dog. And just add, of course, this is what you already know, but even from our numbers, children and adolescents have been suffering from anxiety, depression markedly more these past 2 years than in any other time. And I can go through suicide rates, I can go through all of that. Once again, what we know is that there can be numerous barriers to, academic achievement. And so although the PARCC scores, schools across the country, whatever, might be looking at this as a very pinnacle marker, but it's very important to know that there are so many other things that go into how a student is going to excel. And so, I definitely feel that there is no failure in any of this. And really, if you actually, polled students, and actually just the students, and you can also poll the parents, but what did it mean for you to be in the building last year and to come back right now, just first, 4 weeks? No one's going to talk about PARCC scores. They're going to talk about feeling safe. They're going to talk about feeling encouraged. They're going to talk about, feeling there's been some consistency, all these things. And so I think it's really important to really underscore these other sort of barriers, once again, to learning that have really impacted all students across the country and, really the world, that the school does not have control over, but you actually probably helped them therapeutically to even march through that time. So you did a great, fantastic job, and so did the staff.
Thank you. And that's a really such an important perspective. Thank you. I totally agree with you.
I just wanted to pile on and say two other things. One, I heard a term recently that was being used like in place of RAD risk, which was school dependent, which I thought was a good and accurate term. So I think these numbers, as Terry was saying, they do help reinforce the fact that we do have kids in our population, by no means all, but a number, who are school dependent, right? And we weren't able to offer what we normally offer. And this just helps to, again, reinforce the fact that it's really important that we are socially and emotionally and academically there and supportive for our students. to help them get where they should be able to go. And we know they can do it. So that was one point. And I wanted to tell you about that term because I thought it's a good term. And the other point was just, I really loved the communication to the staff and the parents. I think, you know, there are other schools that might have just kind of retreated and been like, oh, it was the pandemic, you know, test scores aren't that important. There were a lot of ways you guys could have retreated, but I feel like you didn't. And you really, you know, you said we want to do better. Our kids deserve better. And I think that was exactly the right message, even though all these other things are also true. And I just thought that was brave, and, you know, it showed full ownership and full commitment to doing our best for kids. So I congratulate you on that.
Yeah, and Katie, as a parent, from a parent's perspective and being this closely involved and knowing what you and Laura and others are doing, I felt that the entire effort and the focus on the kids over the past year, despite those scores, I never doubted that everyone wasn't putting their best foot forward and working in the best interest of the children and stuff. So, and that's from a parent's perspective. And I would think, and I didn't hear any complaints from other parents too, you know, when I go pick up kids or at this meeting or that meeting and stuff. So, and even at the orientation, when the principal mentioned about the park scores and stuff, there honestly weren't any questions, follow-up questions from parents and everything, which to me is indicative of like they trust the principal, they trusted what she talked about, you know, trying to correct those things and everything. So I think that's a positive also.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Other questions that we can answer for you guys? This is obviously like a hard topic for us, right? It's like it's the both and, right? It's both the like deep ownership for like, we want so much for our students and we recognize all the things that you guys are saying are true, right? It's like, you know, there were lots of people who worked really hard over the last several years, right? And we still want more for our students, right? So it's the both and. And I am really grateful for the push to say like, how can we show support for campuses? Like one of the many reasons why I brag to everyone I know that we have the best board. So we will come back with more thoughts on, you know, how we can make that really tangible and continue in the work that you guys have been doing, you know, to really message to staff that that you all are behind them. So thank you. But other questions on anything that we shared, or should we keep moving? All right, then enrollment. Dan, do you want to speak to enrollment?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. Good to talk to you. As we've been talking about, the school year has started, which is wonderful. It's such a breath of fresh air to have students back in the building. It also means we are starting to get a sense for what our enrollment will be like this year. And it's still a little bit in flux, as it always is at the beginning of the school year, but by early October, things settle down as we get prepared for the enrollment audit. We shared a little bit in our materials, and as we noted there, our enrollment is trending down a little bit, perhaps 3% or so below our targeted enrollment. It's about a percentage point, 1 to 2 percentage points lower than it was last year at this time. The biggest drivers of this by far is our early childhood enrollment. We're seeing both fewer applications for 3- and 4-year-old seats, as well as fewer families being matched and then ultimately enrolling after they submit those applications. To some extent, it's also a result of our decision last year. You all may remember we tamped down our enrollment at certain grade levels last year because of physical distancing needs, particularly in our schools with our smallest classroom sizes. We just didn't enroll as many students, and obviously there's a year-over-year effect of enrollment decisions like that. I think silver lining, I guess, to that is that we're not unique in this. Application levels have been down across the city as a whole, especially in Ward 7 and 8. Pre-pandemic to now in Ward 7, applications are down about 22% citywide, and in Ward 8, about 19% citywide. And that's even more prominent in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. And pre-K 3, for example, Ward 8 applications are down 25% from pre-pandemic. So there's definitely a phenomenon that is both citywide or especially prominent in some of the areas we serve, and we're feeling the effects of that as well. So as a team, we're going to be digging into, what to make of this, how to understand it a little better, how to understand what if this is a citywide trend, what of it can we pull out and learn from our specific circumstances, our specific enrollment at our campuses, and what are the implications for our schools in particular. We're going to come back to the board with more information at a future board meeting, but we wanted to preview this now since it is the beginning of the year in enrollment season, to take any questions and also to hear if there's any areas you would like us to bring in a future board meeting when we do come back with a more full picture of what this means for us and how it is playing out at our schools.
So just a quick response. When I read in the board memo, it said we're going to consider either additional recruiting efforts or just lowering our expectations going forward. And I'm sure that was dramatically simplifying the options. But I would definitely like to hear about different ways that you think about recruitment. I think my guess is DC Prep hasn't had to invest in it a lot over the years because of the brand. But obviously a 3% reduction flows through to the bottom. I mean, I don't know, that's like $1 million of revenue probably. And you probably don't reduce expenses very much by losing 3% across different schools. So there very well could be a very high ROI in recruiting efforts, but that may not be something that you have had to do. And it's hard. I know when I was on the board of Paul, which didn't have the luxury of the reputation of DC Prep, recruiting was a huge, huge issue. And they had to put a lot of effort into various types of radio and in person and door to door and referrals. And so it's obviously not that easy, and you guys should. So I'd be curious to hear at that next board meeting the different ways that you consider and what other schools you would talk to who have had to do it a lot more than DC Prep or KIPP probably have had to.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's something we'll definitely bring to our future follow-up. And I'll add, while I think you're certainly right that we are in a fortunate position due to our reputation, we certainly have invested in student recruitment before. Things like we have a student recruitment associate who sort of manages the program for us, and from signage and posters outside of our schools to some direct mailings to showing up at events to talk with prospective families, there's a certain amount of things we are already doing. And so I think what will be key for us is, one, evaluating the effectiveness of those strategies that we're already employing, and then two, to your point, what else should we be considering that we maybe haven't done before?
Dan, I have a question. Go ahead, Terry.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to pile on to Dan's comment. If, like in an apartment building, if 1% is normal, what we run, the additional 2% for 2,100 kids is 40 students times $15,000. It's a lot of money, and I think I'd love to see a budget. Some portion of the revenues lost should be invested in making sure that neighborhood kids understand how great DC Prep is, in short, for their benefit and for ours. So I'd love to see a fairly detailed expenditure program to look at how we can make sure that everybody's aware of DC Prep that would our potential market within our potential markets. So I see recruiting expenses going up as we compete with other charters and DCPS.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, and then Dan, my question was really follows on Terry, and that is not just the recruitment, but just in the available pool and the change in the demographics in Ward 7 and 8. I mean, and potentially other schools that we're competing against. You know, do we have an understanding of, you know, how that's trending in terms of available 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds that, you know, we are going to be potentially there based on, you know, I don't know, census data or whatever. And then, you know, just in terms of, I'm certain that you guys have a real good understanding of what the competition is, you know, in those areas. But, you know, I wonder as, you know, things change in terms of the overall population, you know, do we have some sort of, I don't know, a SWAT plan or something? Do we have some sort of a, you know, thought around that about how we attack it, not just from the, you know, obviously from the recruitment, which will dovetail into the recruitment effort, but, you know, how are things trending in those areas in terms of, you know, available students? You know, what's the pool look like now and projected? So it's just a thought.
Yeah, thank you for that. I will definitely be digging into that as we analyze the environment and our data to try and answer the questions and bring back to the board. I'll say just briefly that when we think about the pool of students out there, you know, as I mentioned, there's been a pretty significant drop in applications from city as a whole, and especially, for example, in Ward 8, the percentage I named translates to 1,000 fewer applications for schools from pre-pandemic to now. And so is that demographic shifts, as you mentioned, of folks moving out of the city? Is that folks opting out of the school system and keeping their kids at home? Is it something else? There's a lot of potential explanations that we can dig into for what's going on behind the scenes, but it is the case that there are, as of today, fewer students looking for schools across the city, and especially in Ward 7 and 8.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I had some conversations with Laura about this, was that I think what Dan and the team want to do is to conduct some more analysis before we try to figure out how to fix it, because we don't exactly 100% know what's wrong. We're still kind of in the pontificating phase and stuff. So I know that they're diving deep to try to understand what the issues are, and then based on what they find, make recommendations based on what they think the real problem or issue is with the enrollment. And I think you guys are going to try to have something by November when they would come back to the board in November and stuff.
Thanks, Patrick. Totally agree with that.
Are there any more questions on enrollment? The next item is investment policy. And back to you, Dan.
That's me again. Okay, you get more time with me. Investment policy. So you all may recall in our last board meeting, we started the conversation with you all about creating an investment policy and about selecting an investment advisor to manage some of our funds. The Finance and Real Estate Committee has been talking about this for a long time. And the board asked that committee to work on and come back to this full board with a proposed investment policy and a recommended advisor to manage those funds. So I'm going to take a few minutes to remind us why we're discussing an investment policy and an advisor, and then share the recommended policy and advisor and take questions, and hopefully present it for approval by the board. So as a reminder, we have funds in the bank for 4 purposes. The first one is our operating funds. These are the funds that DC Prep uses for our day-to-day needs, student expenses, staff salaries, etc. We keep a certain level of funds in our operating accounts at all times. It would be really irresponsible not to, in case of unexpected expenses or interruptions in funding. And we'll always maintain a minimum of the public charter school board's recommendation, which is a month and a half of cash at minimum. The second set of funds we have is our financing restricted funds. These are funds we're required to keep in reserve accounts for the financing of our buildings. Think of it like collateral that the bank requires us to set aside for our loans. So it's set aside, we don't touch it. Third category is the funds that we've identified for future needs. So we have some things we know we're going to need to spend money on in the future. For example, we're going to have to refinance our AEC facility at V Street in 2024. We're going to have the phase 2 construction at Wilkinson in 24 or 25. And so we set aside funds to ensure that we can meet those obligations when they arise in the future. And then the last category is funds for our long-term sustainability. We don't currently have any funds dedicated to this, but the policy anticipates that we would create an endowment to help sustain DC Prep in the long term. And this fourth category would be funded by private donations, in particular by a foundation grant that we're hoping to receive in the form of an endowment. And as you all, I think, know, endowments are a standard structure that's regularly used by both public and private educational and nonprofit institutions for the same reason we'd be doing it, which is to maintain our ability to serve our community for the long term. We're always trying to be good stewards of our resources, and an endowment has that component, that stewardship component built into its structure, which is why it's used by so many public and private institutions. Those first two categories, the operating funds, the financing funds, they're basically sitting in our bank accounts. They're not earning interest, but there's very little management or discretion about how those are structured. They just are sitting in protected funds or protected accounts. The funds for our future needs, if you read the policy that was circulated, that's what we're calling the fixed income portfolio. If we just let those sit in a bank account that earns minimal or no interest, we could very quickly find ourselves in the position where inflation takes such a big bite out of those funds that we can no longer afford the need we were saving them for. So if you think about our current, nearly 8% annual inflation rate, the $9 million we might have planned to set aside for Wilkinson phase 2 construction, well, those costs might be $10.5 million by 2024 when we need to spend the money. And so our proposed investment policy directs those funds needed for future needs to be kept in a form that still has minimal or no risk, but grows in value over time so we can afford those future expenses. So you should be thinking of things like certificates of deposits, government treasury bills, etc. And then the final category, the endowment funds, which we hope to fund with that $2 million private foundation endowment grant. Those would be managed as is typical for other organizations' endowments, which is by an investment advisor that makes investment decisions within parameters that are set out in our policy. The goal of that would be to grow that investment for the long term so that the earnings can then be used for DC Prep's mission, spending on students or staff. So that investment policy that you received from Laura as an attachment, that's what it outlines. It outlines those four categories and how we would invest and safeguard those funds. And the final thing I'll note is that none of us on the DC Prep team are investment professionals. So it would be irresponsible for us to make investment decisions directly. That's why we conducted an RFP for qualified investment advisors to manage the funds for us. 4 firms responded to the RFP, and after assessing those responses and conducting interviews with the help of the Finance and Real Estate Committee, the committee as a whole is recommending that Brown Advisory is the firm that would best serve us. They presented the lowest fees, but still have a compelling assessment for their services. They're well regarded. They have $120 billion of assets that they manage, including $10 billion of nonprofits. And it was the assessment of the Finance and Real Estate Committee that they would be the advisor that would best serve our needs.
Who's the person from Brown, if you don't mind me asking, that would be dedicated to us?
Let me pull up that name unless Terry or Dan have it on the tip of their tongues.
Matt, this is I've never met this man. It's somebody brand new. There's a Chinese wall between any board member who has a relationship with Brown and our team. They're part of the endowment group. They're highly respected. We can add, it is.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, and with that, I guess I will say first, thank you to Terry and Dan Fine, who have spent a ton of time, energy, and been extremely instrumental in helping develop this policy and ensure that we're approaching this in an appropriate way to safeguard our resources for the present and the future. But I will pause there for other questions or comments.
Let me just make the first comments and thank Dan for a lot of hard work. He's got a lot on his plate, and Dan Fine and I and the other members of the committee put him through a lot of work to get this far. Dan Fine knows a great deal more about this. Investment policies. He's been in the financial world where many of us have not. So Dan, thank you for really and you had the experience at Paul to go through something like this. Other charter schools do this. I just would add that I think that this is a major responsibility of this board to properly steward our assets. When DC Prep was started, Emily Lawson, 20 years ago, we didn't have 2 nickels to call endowment, as they say. So it's a pleasant problem that we have today. We have substantial cash, and to not properly put it in the 4 different buckets that Dan outlined, I think would be semi-irresponsible. So I think we're moving, because we finally have enough cash to be able to consider more than just operating funds, which, to be very blunt, during the first many years of DC Prep, everything was operating. And now I think we can think about meeting the long-term mission of the school, which is that last category. So I'm very enthusiastic about this policy, because I think it'll help the kids, teachers, and to the extent that 5-10 years down the road we want to build another building or have another school, we'll have hopefully assets built up for that purpose. So to better fulfill our mission and to fulfill the responsibilities of all of us as board members to properly steward these assets, the Finance Committee recommends approval tonight. Dan Fine, would you add something to that?
No, I think the summaries that you and Dan provided provide a pretty good overview. I'm definitely supportive of this.
So Terry, are we voting to approve the policy?
Yeah, there are 2 votes that we would request from you tonight. Number 1, for the policy, and we're certainly ready, willing, and able to answer questions concerning that. And number 2, for Brown Advisory to be our investment advisor for both the fixed income portfolio and the endowment portfolio.
Okay, I would just see if there are any more questions or discussions before we vote, and we'll do 2 separate votes. Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to improve the investment policy statement dated September 20th, 2022?
So moved.
I second. I second.
Patrick, aye. Michaela?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Terry's already aye. Chevy?
Aye.
Tamika?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Colette?
Aye.
Maud?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
And Mercedes?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion carries. This is now the official policy of investment policy of DC Prep. Our next vote is for Brown Advisory to serve as the financial advisor for DC Prep Endowment Fund.
Patrick, I guess I would just add to authorize the officers of DC Prep to enter into the necessary documents with Brown to make all that happen. Or Dan, I mean, is that the motion that you think we need It's my understanding that the investment policy would be attached to their boilerplate, 20-page document that we have to sign to get them to manage our money. So I think it's the whole package here. And so I would move that we approve, the motion on the table is to approve Brown as the DC Prep investment advisor for both fixed income and endowment, and to authorize the officers of DC Prep to enter into those documents necessary to make that happen.
Second.
Okay, we'll vote. Patrick is an aye. Michaela?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Chevy?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Colette?
Aye.
Maud?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Tamika?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
And Mercedes?
Aye.
The ayes have it, the motion carries. Okay, next order of business is governance. So I will turn it over to you, Emily.
Thank you. We can totally do it. We typically do the governance, I think just as a board, is that right? But we can do it all together. I think it's fine. So basically, as we said, unfortunately, Jenny is leaving us after 9 years of excellent service. So thank you, Jenny. Michaela, as you all may remember, but I needed to refresh my memory, had agreed to serve another term. So she has 2 more years with us, and that was really to kind of ease the transition, having been a board chair, to stay on, which is great. And so that means that we then have 3 people up for re-election. And they are, Hadley has served 1 term and is up for re-election, and she's here. She was on earlier, but I see her name still. And in addition, Terry has served 1 term of his 2nd series. We had, as many of you know, we had introduced term limits of 9 years, 3 3-year terms a while back. And Terry was then off the board for a period of time. And we also felt like, given his kind of founding board chair service and his great finance and real estate expertise, we asked him to come back on. So he has served another 3-year term, and he is now up for re-election. And Patrick has served 1 3-year term and is up for re-election, and his re-election is very important as he is our board chair. And so all 3 have graciously agreed to stand for re-election.
Uh-oh.
Sync.
You're
Cooling
back.
off, calling back in.
You're back.
Okay, am I back now? You can hear
You're
me?
back. Yep.
Okay. I don't know what you missed, but I said you've all agreed to stand for re-election. I don't think we've done this by Zoom before. So I think maybe you guys should drop off, be looking at your emails, and I will email you to dial back in. Does that make sense? Is everyone able to see email easily? Patrick, yes.
Yep.
Terry and Hadley, yes.
Yep.
Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so let's go in order, alphabetical order. We will take Hadley. So I guess just board members are voting. And I guess we should do this by roll call vote. The section of our newly amended procedures that I haven't read over recently, but I don't think it hurts to do roll call vote. Maybe I should be extra formal and say, let's make a motion to vote on the slate of candidates.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconder, that was
Pam.
Lisa?
Oh.
Pam, thank you. And then I guess we should take a roll call vote on moving to do the election, I guess. Let's just do it to be safe. So, Chevy.
Aye.
Aye. Colette.
Aye.
Ahmad.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Tamika.
Aye.
Mercedes.
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Dan.
Sorry, thanks, Dan. Dan. Fine,
Aye.
thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So let us, we're now going to go ahead and vote on Hadley Cooper serving a second 3-year term as a board member. And I think,
Do we need a motion?
I don't know if we make a motion or we just do a vote. Do you see what I'm
Let's
saying?
go to the vote.
Did you say just a vote? Is that what you said, Dan?
I don't know. I guess we already made a motion, I guess, for the slate. So
Wait, so
sorry.
as long as we have the slate and the slate is documented, then all we need is a vote.
And are we voting on the slate, Pam, or I think we
No,
should
no,
vote
the
on
individual
slate, right?
vote by name,
Yeah, okay. So I'll go in order then here. Pam. Is that a yes for Hadley?
Hadley, yes.
Thank you. Michaela,
Aye.
Chevy,
Aye.
Colette,
Aye.
Ahmad,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Tamika,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Mercedes.
Aye.
Great. Okay, Hadley has been reelected. Now we're going with Patrick. Motion for Patrick to serve a second 3-year term. Pam.
Aye.
Michaela.
Aye.
Chevy.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye.
Ahmad.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Tamika.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Mercedes.
Aye.
Okay, Patrick has been elected for another 3-year term. And finally, Terry. Pam.
Aye.
Michaela.
Aye.
Chevy.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye.
Ahmad.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Tamika.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Mercedes.
Aye.
Great. And sorry, I messed up one thing. I didn't look at my spreadsheet clearly enough. Mercedes is also up for re-election and has graciously agreed to serve another term. Thank you, Mercedes. And sorry about that. So we are now going to make it a motion that we're going to vote on a second 3-year term for Mercedes. And Mercedes, can you drop off the call in 1 sec and look for an email where I send you an email and ask you to jump back on?
Yes, will do.
Thank you. Okay. So can you drop off while we do the vote, Mercedes? And then I'll send you an email when you can come back on. Thanks. Okay, great. Okay, we're now going to vote on Mercedes serving a second 3-year term. Pam.
Aye.
Michaela.
Aye.
Chevy.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye.
Ahmad.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Tamika.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
Thank you. So we have re-elected 4 of our members. Let me send them an email if there's any comment or anything that anyone wants to make. All right, I think we all agree that we're excited to have them. Okay, hold on a second. Mercedes. Terry. Great. Laura, do you want me to also now give a update on governance thinking for the future, or should I wait and do that later?
I think you can wait and do that later.
Sounds good. Okay, I sent them an email asking them to come back on. Okay. They should be back on soon. So just reviewing our numbers, I'll wait till they're back on. Terry, Hadley, Patrick, you have been re-elected.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mercedes is, oh, there she is. Hold on. Mercedes, you have been re-elected.
Yay, thank you.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you all for your willingness to serve a second term. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
I think our next item up